I hope you're having a great day. Well, today I want to talk about something which has no relation to food, something that has no relation to exercise, something that has no relation to sleep. In my line of work over the last couple of years, specializing in cancer and complicated diseases, there's one commonality that we see in most people. I don't say everyone, but in most people, and that is your emotional health. Now, science is beginning to show strong evidence of how emotional health is connected with your physical health. They're trying to show you the mind-body connection and what really happens. When you go deeper into this, you pick out commonalities, things like the inability to forgive, holding on to grudges, resentment, guilt, excessive anger. You look at jealousy, excessive jealousy. Now, why I say excessive? Because things like anger, things like jealousy, all of these things are part of us as human beings. When it's tamed, it's absolutely fine. When it gets out of control, it just doesn't hurt the people around us, but it hurts us as well. So sometimes, in the field of holistic medicine, our job is to diagnose, get to the root cause of every single thing, from a symptom to the way you think to the way you feel. And it comes out in almost every case, a deeply rooted emotion, and we have to give significance to that. If your problem is caused by 80% of your negative emotions, then 80% of your treatment and healing will be focusing on that particular emotion. And the balance would be your food and your medication and everything else. If the cause of your problem or your disease is probably your food, then you need more focus on your food. If it's your lifestyle, you need more focus on your lifestyle. Now, we have a lot of people who come to us, and when we deep dive into their emotions, we find that forgiveness, the inability to forgive, is something that everyone struggles with. Most people. Blessed are the people who can actually forgive people very easily, but without holding that residue in your heart. It's easy for us to say, oh, I forgive this person, I forgive that person, but then inside you it's boiling and it's slowly rusting and eating inside of you. So forgiveness is complete and whole. It is difficult. Most people struggle with it. Everyone struggles with it, myself included. But my point of today's video is to understand, because I've been going deeper and deeper into forgiveness. I'm not a counselor, I'm not an emotional counselor, I'm not very spiritual, but the things that I've learned from people. So we have people who see us, they could be husband and wife, it could be mother and daughter, father and son, with this inability to forgive. And when we separate them and when we deep dive further into them, this is what I've really learned about forgiveness. Why we find it difficult to forgive. Now, we have to understand that there are some things which are very drastic. Crimes against people, rapes, child rape. These things are, beyond what we can imagine that the person's going through. I'm not talking about that because I don't even know how someone can forgive something like that. So I can't talk in depth about that. But I'm talking about simple forgiveness for someone who hurt you, someone who betrayed you, someone who probably had an affair, or whatever it is. I'm talking about that forgiveness, okay? Basically what it comes down to is our attachment to the image of how we want life to be, our attachment to the image of how we want the other person to be. So if I have an attachment to my own image of how I want my daughter to behave, if she behaves out of that image that I have in my mind, I start getting worked up. I have a problem. I get angry. This is only an example. My daughter's really cool. Okay, for example, if you have an attachment to an image of how your partner should be, and every time your partner doesn't behave according to the image that you have in your mind, you get angry, you feel hurt, and you find it difficult to forgive. You can't forgive until you break the attachment that you have to that image. It is so important to understand, because when we're attached to that image, we want to control how the other person behaves or how life should behave towards us, how our bosses, our colleagues, our parents, our children, our siblings. We are so attached that we want to control how everyone around us behaves. That doesn't mean we're controlling and dominating. It just means that we are so attached to that image that anything that contradicts that image hurts us, disappoints us, makes us angry, or makes us feel all the negative emotions that I just spoke about. Now, everyone has images about everything. If I put 5 people in a room and I asked everyone, what is your belief system or your mindset about love, how love should be? 5 people will give you 5 different mindsets. One person will say love to me is appreciation and care. Someone else will say it's intimacy and caring for me and remembering my birthday. The third person will just be pure honesty. I just want honesty from my partner and I'll be happy. The fifth person may be like, I like gifts, I like to be taken out, I like cuddling, I like all of that stuff. You get 5 different mindsets. So when two people come together, not just husband, wife, parent, daughter, son, child, all of that stuff, relationships in general. When I'm talking about relationships, it could be between your boss, anyone. I'm not just talking husband, wife, girlfriend, boyfriend. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about relationships. So if I have an image about love and you have an image about love which don't match, there is obviously conflict. There is obviously conflict. Now, it doesn't mean that you have to adapt and match your image with that person. What it means is that you got to communicate. So when I understand that my partner needs 1, 2, 3 to be happy, and mine may be completely different. For example, a lot of people think that they're loving, but their partner doesn't think they're loving because you have different ways of perceiving love and interpreting love. Your partner may be thinking that the little that I do, I feel in my image of love, that's how I should be. But your partner doesn't see it that way, and you see conflict and there's hurt and there's disappointment. Not just with love, with happiness, with peace. Everyone has a different image and a mindset about peace, happiness, which is why the things that make you happy doesn't have to make your partner happy. They have a different image and different requirements for what makes them happy, and you have something different. That's perfect because we're all individual, unique human beings. We all have different views. That's why some people like you, some people don't like you. Don't try to change that. They just don't like your mindset and you just don't like their mindset, which further perceives into behavior and everything else. So what we see coming back to disease and stuff like that, when we find out, why can't you forgive this person? Because I know unforgiveness is the biggest obstacle towards anyone's healing. Not just if you have a disease, but even moving forward in life. If you're stuck in unforgiveness, you can't move forward, period. You're stuck. Until you learn to slowly forgive that person, the first thing, like I said, you don't have to accept things which are bad. That's why we have the word called boundaries. We all have individual boundaries. Like my boundary, this is my boundary. If you operate within my boundary, it's absolutely fine. I can accept, I can learn to let go, I can compromise, but if it's out of my boundary, there's absolutely no tolerance. So for example, I can accept someone doing X, Y, and Z, but if they're getting into drugs and they're coming home violent and stuff like that, for example, that's out of my boundary, which is why as individuals, we have to draw our boundaries. So forgiveness is not about accepting an abusive partner who's getting drugged up and coming and beating you at home. Forgiveness is not about not exercising control over your children. So your children are like, okay, I forgive you. You did 5 lines of cocaine last night. It's all cool. That's fine. It's not about that. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about forgiveness within your boundaries. And for that, as individuals, each and every one of us have to know our boundaries. Because if it's out of our boundaries, it doesn't mean you have to forgive. You can forgive to move on. It doesn't mean you have to like the person. You forgive to release yourself so that you can move on. We have to understand this, and this requires us to do our homework. You see, there are too many of us out there trying to constantly control how we want people around us to behave, and only if they behave a perfect way we feel good. If they change their ways, we feel bad, we feel disappointed. So it's very, very important for all of us to go back and understand who are the people that we're struggling to forgive. Who are the people? Write it down. This is so important for you to do this exercise. Now, what are the things about that person that you cannot forgive? And you'll find out that in most cases, the things that you can't forgive are the things that are against your mindset, are against your image of how you want them to be. And when we learn to accept that everyone is different, we can accept them truly within the boundaries that we've defined for ourselves. If it's outside of our boundaries, we don't have to accept them. We don't have to accept anyone. Now, sometimes we're stuck in a situation in life where we cannot let go or cannot get out of certain relationships. The next thing that we need to do is change the way that we think. Again, if it's still within our boundaries, there's no point being in an abusive relationship that's going to spoil your health. There's no point being in a relationship that is going to drain you completely over the years and rob you of your health. So you decide what fits inside of your boundary and you do it. Now, like I said, this is not an easy exercise. It's difficult. There are people who struggle to forgive. But finally, it has to come to us. because the person changing is not going to be your reason for you forgiving them. It's only going to be how you see them within your new framework of what you've decided to be your mindset. So sometimes just sit down and write love, happiness, career, ambition, relationships, children, parents, education, and write down your mindset about each of these. And then wherever you're struggling with someone else, try to understand what their mindset is. We never go and ask other people who we love or we're in relationships, what's your mindset about love? What's your mindset about happiness? And you'll be surprised how much of difference there will be between two mindsets. It's okay, accept the difference. The next thing is, how do you communicate with one another? Your partner, when I'm saying your partner, could be anyone. The person you're in a relationship with, your sister, your mother, anyone. They wouldn't even know what your mindset is. So they'll be wondering, why does this person behave this way? And you'll be wondering, why does that person behave this way? So it is so important for you to understand, accepting and understanding which mindset of yours is limiting to you. Okay, if our mindsets are to change everyone around because we want life to be a particular way, or we want people to be a particular way, you are only going to face disappointment after disappointment, misery after misery, and you'll never come out of it. And then that unforgiveness becomes bitterness, and bitterness basically rusts you from inside. You can never feel happy. Your happiness depends on how someone else behaves. Your happiness depends on how someone else reacts or behaves with you, or what life gives you. And that's where most of the problems stem. So it's communication, understanding mindsets, understanding beliefs. And that's how it works. I mean, this is the little that I've learned about forgiveness. Like I said, I'm not an emotional counselor, but I do know for sure that most people that we try to get them to forgive, they are just too attached to their idea of how life should be or how someone should be. And the only person who can change that is yourself, within the boundaries that you basically define yourself. Have a great day, everyone. Until next time, eat smart, move more, sleep right, and breathe deep. I see a question about talk on vaccines. Unfortunately, there is no vaccine that can help you with forgiveness. It has to be your own effort and your own work that you do with yourself. Have a great day, everyone.